Hi, I'm Indra, and I'd like to welcome you to the Messy Middle Matters, where my friends and I explore all the twists, turns, and challenges that arise in the messy middle of work. Hey everyone, welcome back to the Messy Middle Matters. I am so excited for today's conversation. Something that we've talked about in the past is the types of support that are available in your companies, the types of support that aren't available in your companies. And what we're going to be talking about today, I don't think I've ever seen any sort of training or programs or anything related to this inside of an organization. So, before we dig into the content, I want to welcome Stephanie. Stephanie, welcome, 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 welcome. Thank you for joining me.
Thank you for having me. I'm really excited about this conversation and about getting to connect again with you.
100%. And so, why don't you tell everybody a little bit about yourself, and then we'll dig into, drum roll, please, the Goo Stage.
Yeah. So I feel like I'm one of those multi hyphenates. I'm really excited that the culture has started to embrace that because many years ago when I would do it myself, people were like, "No, what are you?" And I'm like, "I'm many things." So I start off by first saying that all my work comes through the lens of I'm first and foremost a performing artist, a dancer. From the time I could walk, I started dancing, and that's what I did professionally for the first 16 years of my career. And seeing life through that arts, I would say arts education, arts lens is really how I walk through life and space. And it was being in the dance world, the musical theater world, the arts world that really evolved into what I'm doing now. So I am an executive and leadership development coach and consultant. I work with individuals and teams, groups, and organizations on helping them navigate change and transition in an intentional way. And there's a lot of layers to that. I have a background in psychology and like specifically looking at our relationship with stress and how do we make a healthier relationship with it so that we can perform in our lives in a sustainable way. So I've really kind of taken all the different things that I've been curious about throughout my life and putting them together to give back to others.
Mhm.
Um, and so I'm very much somebody who I'm also experimenting with all the things that I'm sharing with other people. And then also making sure that I'm getting the proper training and credentialing so that I am being of service in a healthy way too for others.
We could dig in on that last point for days, but that will derail us from our topic for the day. It might show up a little bit later. But what I want to do is start talking about the reason that you're here. Like years ago, this is many, many moons ago, Ayanna Van Zandt had a book that came out in the meantime. And the premise of the book was that we think that our life is about these milestones, but most of our life is spent in the meantime between milestones. It's not in the I'll use the sexy stuff. It's not the sexy stuff. It's not the Instagrammable stuff. It's the everyday mundane. And in that mundane, there's a lot of growing, developing, restoring. Like it's not one thing. It's not one thing. And what you've done is you've found this beautiful language and this beautiful framing for the transformational phases of our life, the goo. So, talk to us a little bit more about the goo. Like, how did you get there? What is it? Like, I'm going to hand it over to you.
Yeah. Well, Indra, as you were saying this, I just had like a flashback to when I was directing and choreographing musicals and concert dance and telling my performers that the transitions between scenes and the transitions between the different movements, those are what we're going to make or break the overall performance, right? Like you could have these amazing show-stopping numbers in a musical, but if the transition, like the set change or the transition from big song to the scene there was clunky or we weren't paying attention and being intentional with them, we were going to lose the audience. We were going to lose the momentum, right? That like those transitions are so crucial. And yet we, as you said, we kind of forget about them or we don't pay attention to them. We're just like, oh, we'll fit like whatever. I
We'll
find
fix
and
that in post. Like, we can't fix it all in post. No.
exactly, especially, I mean, like, I did a lot of live performance.
Mm,
I was in, film and television as well, but, like, a lot of live performance. You can't fake like, it's
no.
happening. You gotta figure it out, right? So, um, I guess just another way to say that, like, I look at everything through, like, if we were on stage. Um, and what that also reminded me of is, like, even in my own life, I find myself getting stuck on like, okay, what's next? And not actually
Mm,
living in where am I right now? And that
yeah.
there isn't anything wrong when we're in that space that doesn't have maybe a peak, right? That like we need that space in between as well. So those were some things that came up. But to answer your question about like the stage, is that if we actually really think of ourselves as almost always being in transition to some extent, right? Like we always are transitioning into something. But in these bigger stages, like maybe seasons of life, I like to say like seasons, some people might say chapters, but in these different seasons of life, we do transform in different ways. And over the last few years, I've always been really intrigued by butterflies, like just always have been. And the more I was like learning about them over like the last like decade and stuff, I'm like, whoa, I guess I didn't realize that when the butterfly goes in the chrysalis, which some people listening might be like, what do you mean, a cocoon? Little side note, cocoon is for moths, which is totally fine. You want to be a moth, that's fine too. Though if we're really thinking of butterflies, right? The caterpillar going into the butterfly, that Eric Carlisle's book we all probably read when we were a kid, you Hungry Hungry Caterpillar. What we don't talk a lot about is what happens in that chrysalis. And what
Mm,
actually happens in that chrysalis is that the caterpillar goes into goo, like full liquid goo, pulpa, like all of those science words, right? And it is the chrysalis that is holding it so that it can fully like form into a different state so that it can then transition and transform into another state, which is the butterfly. Right. And it like, I don't know, light bulb moment, if we want to call it, a couple of years ago where I was like, we just always talk about like caterpillar to butterfly, but we're not actually pausing and going, what happens in the chrysalis in that goo stage? And it's uncomfortable, right?
right.
And I mean, I guess in a more like private way, I just remember about almost a year and a half, maybe two, well, close to 2 years ago now, just being in one of those states where I was like, the language I was telling my friends, I was like, I just feel like I'm a puddle. And I was like curled up on my couch, just like in the fetal position, just like feeling like, I mean, I'm crying a lot, just like feeling like a lot was going. And I was like, this feels weird. I just feel like I'm in a puddle. And that is a very vulnerable state, obviously. And so being in the goose stage is a vulnerable place to be. And so I started thinking about, okay, but the caterpillar makes it out to the being the butterfly because it has the chrysalis. And so like what's my chrysalis, right, in that moment? And then I started thinking, well, what's other people's chrysalis? And like, what's an organization's chrysalis when they're going through change? And it just kind of started to evolve from there.
Yeah, it's one of the things that's coming to mind is like th you're surrendering also to being the goo. Because if you avoid the goo, I'm just imagining, and I don't know the science behind it. Like, okay, one of my besties, Bestie Mary, and I have this retirement plan. We're going to be butterfly docents. There's a whole story behind it. As our retirement plan. That's gonna be it. We're gonna be the ladies with the like the anyway. So but it's I imagine there's a surrender to it. Like if the butterfly of excuse me, if the caterpillar avoided becoming goo, if it resisted becoming goo, I would imagine that it cannot actually emerge as a butterfly. It'll get stuck as some warped version of goo that is still trying to caterpillar, right? And I don't know if that science tracks, but it feels like it might.
You know, I also am just gonna say I don't know about the science about this, but it is making me go, I'm gonna look into this afterwards because,
Yeah.
yeah, I mean, there's got to be some caterpillars that don't fully. make it to the other side of the transformation, right? And so as you were talking about the resistance, and resistance is so normal when change
Mhm.
is happening, right? Like I would say that's probably the most human thing is to resist change, even though change is the only thing that
Only
is
constant in life.
right. Like it's so wild. And so it's very human to resist it, and the reason it's really human to resist it is because change means we're moving into something we don't know, right? Like, it's the unknown, it's uncertain, and so therefore, it feels scary, right? So the brain goes, "Oh gosh, this is scary," and what happens with the brain is the brain can't differentiate between, "Oh, I'm being chased by a bear," to, "Oh, this is really scary. I don't know what's coming next in my life," right? And the brain is designed to keep us safe. And so the way it keeps us safe is by going into our stress reaction. And I specifically use the word reaction, right? Because it's a habitual response. So when we're afraid, and depending on what the catalyst for that, what we call the stressor, the perceived threat, we'll either choose to go into fight, flight, freeze, or fawn. And those are practice things from when we were younger, right? And like we're designed to do that so that we can stay alive, right? The thing is that not every change is a bad thing, right? Some might even say every change is a good thing if we choose to look at it that way, right? Like that we can find the the benefit or the growth opportunity in anything that's happening if we so choose to see it that way. And so the resistance part, the more that we resist something, we're actually just exhausting ourselves because we're staying stuck in that stress reaction, and we're not designed to stay in the stress reaction, that stress cycle hormonally in any sort of way. And so that's where we then end up being exhausted, right? And
Yeah.
then maybe even burnt out, or a myriad of other things that could happen, which in stress management science, we call the strain or the outcome of the process.
Yeah, I love that. I love that. And something that popped into my brain was something that I heard said comfort and safety are not correlated. There can be coincidental, like they can show up together, but comfort and safety are not the same thing. And if you're in the goo stage, it's uncomfortable. Like the chrysalis is the safety. The goo is not comfortable, right? And people just I want people just to really hear that, because when I heard that from Frances Fry, when she said it, I was like, "Oh, this is money, this phrase," right?
Mm.
And what you're describing, like I said, is discomfort in a safe environment, and navigating that goo to hopefully emerge as a big, beautiful butterfly.
Yeah. I love the language you're using, and I want to share how I actually use this in
Please.
practice.
Love it.
So as part of my business portfolio, I adjunct at a one of the CUNY colleges in New York City, which is where I'm based, and I teach stress management and I teach yoga, and every semester I start off with all three classes with what I call creating a partnership agreement with the
Mm,
classroom. Because as you can hopefully people can imagine, those topics of stress management and yoga, they are not just lecture-based things. We it's an experiential class, and both are designed to be hopefully transformative
mhm,
for the students if they so choose to participate in that sort of way, right? They also have agency in how they want to participate. And so in order to do that, like you said, we have to get uncomfortable. And
mhm,
so I say we need to create a space, a container. So we're creating this chrysalis together, right? Of how do we feel supported in this space? Not necessarily safe and comfortable, right? But how do we feel supported? Because there are going to be moments now. Some people might be like, well, we want to be safe. And there's that whole language around safe spaces and all of that. What what I hope that people mean by safe spaces is that people are not being judged, they're not being hurt intentionally in those spaces. However, that safety and comfort and all of that, like I want people to feel supported so that I guess they feel safe in that way, but like at the same time that they feel supported to be safe, or however we want to say it, to be uncomfortable. Because if they're not uncomfortable at some point during the semester, they're not embodying the work that we're trying to do to get to that place of transformation at the end of the semester, of whatever transformation that they are going through, right? Like, I don't know exactly, but and so then we spend time talking about what is it that we need from other people to feel supported, to be uncomfortable, and
Mhm.
what are we willing to give? Because when we use the word partnership, partnership is about two or more people giving and receiving 100% to each other and to the space, right? To the chrysalis. And so some people might call these, oh, those are just norms. That's just all that. And I always like kind of go back and say, well, a norm is usually something that is given to you. It's a rule. It's a thing like that.
Mhm.
This is more about how do we want to be together. And one of my friends, peers, colleagues who's a therapist always reminds me, like, we're human beings, not human doings. And I
Yeah.
see this in the corporate spaces all the time. They just jump into the doing, right? Like do, 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 do. And they forget that, like, well, you're doing this with human beings, and human beings, like, we need to pause and we need to understand how do we want to actually be in relationship with each other, and taking that pause to create that container, whether it's through a partnership agreement or other things, helps people feel more supported
Yeah.
when they're going through these uncomfortable stages.
Okay. So many things are in my brain right now. The first thing is social contracts. You're creating a social contract for the room that everyone in that room buys into. Like it's not you're not dictating a contract, you're co-creating and shaping that contract with everyone in that room. The other thing that I want to acknowledge is that the way that you're describing and the way that I've experienced you like walking in this world, it demonstrates the depth of understanding of what your skills are, what it requires to create an environment that is supportive, that has the integrity that you're looking for people to be able to goo, slightly goo, glue, flirt with goo, whatever. Like it's you are so skilled in what you do and you understand how to support that and you also understand your limits. So I just want to give that shout out and I want to call that out because not everyone there are a lot of people running around and I won't name names, like, there's some people with very famous books that are running around with all sorts of authority around these types of things, but it's not grounded in education or lived experience the way that you're walking through this. So I just wanna just say that, like, thank you for doing what you're doing. Thank you for normalizing goo. Thank you for creating an environment that the goo can flourish in? I don't even know if that's the right word.
I really well, first of all, I really appreciate that. And while I am working on accepting, feedback and compliments in that way, I'm going to just say thank you. And I'm going to add to it that I feel like I've been in spaces where
Mm,
the person of power or influence was not necessarily doing it in a way that felt effective, and I have felt the what that does to
yeah.
me, to others in the system and all of that. And in my I did two different graduate programs. The first one was an MFA in dance, and that again laid the foundation to a lot of the work I'm doing right now. I was in a group of us in the grad program. We're in a dance process with a guest choreographer, and it was not a healthy one. It was pretty toxic. And I mean, we did a great job because we ourselves came together and said we're doing this for us and not for this person, and the ego that was involved in all of that. And so we ended up performing really well, right? Though
Yeah.
that process of getting there was not sustainable. And
Yeah.
I got really interested for my thesis project on that idea of like peak performance and sustainable performance. And I
Mm.
went into it like thinking, how do we do this for individuals? And there isn't a lot of research around like dance and like peak performance and theater and stuff, but there is the whole field of sports psychology. So I ended up studying sports psychology and going, what are you doing with all these athletes and how do we bring it into the dance studio? And I would say, I mean, there's so many gifts that I got in that exploration, that research process, and one of them being that I started learning more about leaders and like the leader's responsibility, and that leadership is not about expertise all the time, right? That leadership isn't about having all the answers. That
Yeah.
leadership isn't about being authoritarian and dictating and having power over. Leadership is about understanding that group that you have. Now, I will say this, if you all have the similar goals, so like in sports, like,
Mhm.
to win whatever big
Win
game it
sports
is,
ball. Win sports ball. Yes.
like if that is the goal that everybody has, the coach is actually, and I talked to a bunch of coaches in
Mm.
various sports. I'm a big sports person and my brain is fogging.
It's okay, we can blame the cold. There's a big freeze going over the US right now. We're blaming everything on the cold.
Whether it's basketball or soccer or football or any of those, and the coaches were saying like most of my job is to
Mhm.
understand my players and help motivate and inspire them to be able to do the thing that I know they're good at, right? And to get the team to be cohesive and trust each other and know their roles and be there and all of that. So are there like skills that they practice? Of course. And like the physical things and the routes and the plays and the blah, 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 and all of that. Though there's also a big mental emotional part of it. And I was like, oh, that is missing a lot in the experience I had with this guest choreographer, but then I started going, it's missing a lot in a lot of areas of life, when we look at the corporate world, whether it's a manager and then a leader or division head, department head, managing director, all of those, like how are you actually leading your team? And that is about being part of a group, and that takes a different skill set. And so I appreciate that you recognize that I'm really trying to put these things into practice even in my own work so that I'm not continuing these toxic cycles that are so prevalent in many areas of our life.
It's very American to, like, command the spotlight and speak with authority even when you don't have it. Like, it's just like or the depth that support that authority. Um, but, this is a lovely transition into so, we can take I wanna hit both of them, and you can choose the sequence in which we hit them. Like, how can leaders support their team when they're in goo, right? Or they can sense their team is in goo. How can they recognize and support it? And so the companion question is, and again, I don't know what's the best sequence to talk about them. When somebody feels like, oh my gosh, I feel like a puddle, right? I feel myself feeling like nothing fits anymore. Like I can't figure out my head from my tail, and I can't figure out why. Like the body, what is it? The body keeps the score. The body can interpret something faster than the brain can, right?
Mhm.
Like what recommendations you have for somebody who's in goo to help them navigate through it and emerge better than they walked into that goo stage as.
Yeah. Okay. So the first answer I have actually goes to both
Okay.
topics. The first thing I would say is acknowledge and validate it.
Mm,
So when we are in, like we just said, the goo stage is going to activate a stress reaction, right? And so we are going to think that we're in danger, that something's wrong, that we need to fix it, right? And so when we go, that we need to save ourselves and all of that. So whether you are a leader and you're seeing that in a team, whether you're seeing it in yourself, is to pause and actually acknowledge and validate that you're in this and that it's
mm,
okay, right? So earlier I said I specifically used the word stress reaction. When
mhm,
we're trying to create a healthy relationship with stress, one that like works with and for us and not against us, we need to respond. Right.
mm,
So a reaction is just like habitual. We're not even thinking about it. It's like literally we just react. Right. Response, in order to do that, we need to create a pause and we need to start to regulate ourselves, right? When we're
mhm.
in the stress reaction, we're dysregulated. So start to regulate ourselves so that we can respond in an intentional way. So I needed my hands, so I needed to put down my inside out anxiety mug.
Okay.
When we're in the stress reaction, we're in tunnel vision, right? So there's this. We can only see what's right in front of us. Sometimes there's a light at the end of that tunnel, but if sometimes it feels like that light just keeps getting further and further away, right? And what we're doing usually is the same thing we've done all the time. So it's either running away, fighting back, numbing out, freezing, fawning, which is like overly performative, engaging, and making sure everybody else is okay. And what we need to do is remind ourselves, hey, I'm okay. This is something's happening. I don't know what it is yet, but something is happening and I'm going to be brave and I'm going to figure out what it is, but we're going to take it step by step. That's if an individual, a leader is going to acknowledge to the team. So over the last few years, I would say, definitely the last 5 years, there's been a lot of reorgs. There's been a lot of um,
Just one
just
or two.
change, right? And so naming as a leader, like we are going through a lot of change. It is understandable that you are probably exhausted, that you are scared, that you are mourning the loss of some of your colleagues who are not here anymore, right? So we haven't even touched on the fact that the Goo Stage brings up a ton of grief. And what that whole we could do a whole different podcast on
Oh
that.
my god, we should. We really should. If you're up for it, I would love
Yes.
to.
Yes,
For
I would
real.
love to talk about that because we don't talk about grief in its totality
No,
as much as I think we need to. And
no.
I have noticed in sessions with teams and individuals when I mention, hey, it sounds like you're grieving. I can then just see. So again, this is acknowledging and validating. I can see their systems just kind of go,
It's
oh,
not just me. Oh my god, I'm not hallucinating
right.
this. This is really
Yeah.
happening.
And
Yeah.
you're right. I am
Yeah.
grieving. Right. And when we think about, I know we're getting a little
That's
tangenty,
okay. We're giving him a teaser for the next episode that we do
but I'll
together.
bring it back to the caterpillar here. The caterpillar literally lets go of its entire state. It lets go of its identity. It is no longer a caterpillar, and I use this in a lot of my writing of the fact that the caterpillar is a land-bound creature unless it takes a lot of time to crawl up a tree and all of that, right? Like, it is land-bound, and it doesn't know what's on the other side of it, and so, I'd said bravery and courage to say, like, "I'm brave, I'm courage to be able to move through this. I don't know what's next." That's what happens to the caterpillar. It's like, I don't know. I'm supposed to be eating. I'm eating. I'm eating. I'm building this thing. I don't know what's going to happen, but I'm going to trust that and I'm going to be brave and courageous in doing this. And then it loses its an entire identity to then become this butterfly that now is a land and sky bound, right? A caterpillar, I mean, a butterfly can fly and see so many other things and it
And
can
migrate. It migrates.
exactly, right? Like all of this other stuff to be able to be that. So if we think about, okay, I'm in my stress cycle, here's this. If I can start to regulate myself by acknowledging and validating that what I'm in makes sense, it's understandable, it might be challenging, and I trust that I'm going to find my way through, we start going, oh, I'm safer than I think I am, right? Maybe we go, hey, I need to talk to a friend or I need to reach out to somebody. Now we're getting support from other people, right? We call that social support. And then all of a sudden the blinders start opening up and we can see more things. And we go, oh, wait, maybe there's this thing over here that I could like explore. Maybe there's this thing over here I could explore. Or maybe I could choose to look at what I'm in a different way. Right? Like, so then perspective, like you're wearing glasses today, right? Things look very different when you take your glasses off, I assume. I
Just
also
a
wear
little.
glasses. And so, like, we can choose to have them on and have them off, and it's going to change how we see things, which is then going to change how we feel about them, which is then going to change how we respond to them. Right? So, that was kind of an answer for both of those things.
I love that. And I guess the next question I have, finding the right resources. I touched on it a little bit where, I've I've been on my own versions of journeys too, and I've had both good teachers and bad teachers. I think I've learned just as much from both. Maybe more from the bad ones, maybe because of volume or because it hits differently. But what resources, of course, we're going to make sure all your information is in the show notes. Feel free to shout out your stuff. But what are the good resources, touchstones, things for people to just like, I love having like a good touchstone when I'm going through something so I can look at it every once in a while and be like, okay, just keep going. Just keep going.
Mhm.
Right? Yeah.
Yeah. So, um, there's a couple of, like, people that come to mind that I always kinda come back to. I'm a big, Dr. Brené Brown fan, and her different books. She has so many of them. The first book of hers that I read, it wasn't the first book I don't think she wrote, was, The Gifts of Imperfections, and I definitely come back to that one at different times, and, her most recent book that I'm working my way through is called Strong Ground, and one of the things I really appreciate about her is that she's very open about how she's using these tools too, and when she's successful at them and when she's not. And so for me, the other thing that came up as you were talking was having people really trust themselves and their own intuition around things, right? Um, there's so much information out there in the world, and there's so many people that are trying to sell things to be helpful, and I truly do believe, like, when you do pause and you think to yourself, what is my body telling me right now? Not my brain, because your brain is gonna go from that fear place, right? So someone's gonna say on Instagram or LinkedIn or whatever they're on, right? Like, here's how I did this, and here's how I did this, and this, you could do this and these 3 steps and blah, 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 blah. And they're selling. Your brain is like, okay, I need that, I need that, I need that. Okay, I'm gonna get, yeah, 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 I gotta do this, I gotta
Yeah.
do
Yeah.
this.
Yeah.
But somewhere, if you pause, your body will tell you, does this feel right to me? Does this feel, and if it's like, well, I do really like what they're saying about this, great. And then ask questions, right? Be curious. Ask questions all the time. um Always ask questions. I really appreciate what you said about, like, you learned from both the good and the bad, because I think, and that maybe even more from the bad. I've had similar experiences, and I think it's a choice to learn from both of them, and we actually can learn so much from the experiences that maybe were bad and all of that, to make them experiences that are actually then very useful for us. And I remember years ago, I hired a coach, and I she was referred by somebody else that I knew really close, and so there was all this stuff, but I was definitely in this kind of fear sort of place, and I could feel in my body that, like, I didn't know whether this was the right thing, but I got wrapped up in all of it. I hired her, I paid her up front. I think about how much I paid her at this point, and I was like, "Oh my god, like, that was a lot of money. Like, how did that happen?" And then the moment we got into this coaching container, and I was very open about what I wanted and what I needed and what my goals were. As soon as the money hit and as soon as we got into conversation, it was like, "Well, I can't do that. Oh, I don't know that. You'll have to do that." And I was just like, "Whoa, what just happened here?" Right? And so it took me, like, I continued it in a way that I was like, "Well, what do I wanna how do I wanna take agency back?" Like, that's
Hmm.
the other thing is, like, when we're in our stress reaction, we are no longer in the driver's seat, fear is. When we're responding, fear is still there, but we're in the driver's seat, right? Like, it's still, like, in the back seat or
Mm.
in the trunk, but we are still driving the car. And so I was like, "Okay, how do I take back my agency in here? Because 'Cause I'm not getting my money back." But, I learned a lot about that, and one of the other things I learned from that experience was, listen, we can talk about credentialing and all of that, and some of it is great, and some of it is, like, a lot of other stuff, and really learn about the person that you're hiring, right? Or really learn about the person that you're listening to on podcasts and things like that. If that person can't also be a human being and, like, share in a very authentic way, not in a packaged social media advertising sort of way, but in a very real way about how they are also a human trying to figure this out too. That's when my spidey senses would be like, maybe that's not somebody to continue to follow in all of that. So Brene Brown comes up for me. Honestly, I listen to, like, podcasts like Armchair Expert because what I love about that is they bring on different people from a lot on Wednesdays from a lot of different, fields, and so then I can listen to a lot of different people's, like, things, and then when I say different fields, like, all over the place, and then usually they're, on the Wednesday shows, they're usually promoting a book of some sort. Then I go, "Okay, I'm interested in, like, reading part of that book or whatever." So I always tell people just be really curious, like, pull from different things and then sit with it and go, what works for me? Even with my clients, I will say, like, I want to try to give you as many resources and tools as possible so that when you are navigating life, you have a toolbox of so many different things that you can pull on because one day one tool might work, the next day it might not. So which one do you want to pull from?
I love that. You said so much. That was money. That was money. And the one small thing that I can add to what you've said, because you've covered so much territory. If they're selling a one size fits all solution, that to me is red flag, red flag, red flag, red flag. Because to your point, everyone is different and you yourself can be different on different days and in different scenarios and in
Yes.
different contexts. So one size fits all for something like this, probably not the most skilled or nuanced or a person with depth, a lot of surface shine,
Yeah.
right?
Yes.
So I love it.
Yes. Yeah.
Stephanie, we covered so much territory and you will come back. Yes?
Yes. Yes.
Love, 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 love. Um, anything else you want to leave everyone with before we sign off?
I guess, like, in thinking about, like, the chrysalis, I guess the questions are, like, invitations that I would leave people with is thinking about, like, what does support look like for you when you're going through transition? Um, because even in this last chunk of, like, thinking about, like, help and resources and stuff, I
Yeah.
always try to, like, also educate people on, like, the different forms of help and, like, what help do you need when? And when we are scared and overwhelmed and in that fear state and all of that, we just wanna feel better, right? And so we'll just kinda go to the thing that is that easy comfort maybe at the first thing, and so being able to really reflect when you're not fully in that state, what is it that actually supports me? Who supports me, right? Like, I one thing I really do pride myself on is, like, my community. Like, the people in my community, I love them dearly. I know they love me dearly, and so when I am dipping into different, like, goo states and stuff, I know that there are people I can call, whether it's a voice note, or actual phone call, or a text, who are going to show up for me, right? And, like, they're going to be there to help hold just the same way I am for them, right? Like, that is our partnership. That to me is partnership, right? So really thinking about what does support look like for me and who are those people that can help me? What are those things that help me? Like if it's, physical activity, what are the things that help you to feel good? Like I run and dance, have dance parties in my home, like whatever that may be so that you are building your chrysalis, right?
Yeah.
Like so that it is there for you when you need it. So I think that would be my like last invitation for people.
I we have barely scratched the surface. Stephanie, I am delighted. I'm so glad that we know each other. I'm so glad that we are some part of each other's chrysalises.
Yes,
And I look forward to you joining us again for at least one more episode. I feel like there might be more.
I would love
So we can talk a little bit more about all the things. I am positive folks got something out of this episode, whether it's for themselves or for somebody that they know. Hopefully, they'll feel seen in this episode. And I hope you'll all join us next time for another topic from the messy middle. Bye, everyone. Thanks for taking time with us in the messy middle. Word of mouth remains most powerful way for people to find us. If this episode sparked something for you, we'd love it if you'd subscribe to the podcast on your favorite app, download a few episodes, and share it with someone else who's navigating the in between. Do you have ideas for future episodes or topics you'd like us to explore? You can find our feedback form at themessymiddlematters.com or in the show notes. Thank you for joining us on this journey. This work is better when we do it together. Until next time.